The first item is the election of 11 members of the Board of Directors. Each director holds office for a term of 1 year. Each of the current directors is nominated for election at this meeting. The board recommends a vote for the election of all of the nominees. The next item is ratification of the appointment of PricewaterhouseCoopers LLP as the company's independent registered public accountants for the current fiscal year, as recommended by the Audit Committee of the Board of Directors. David Johnson, a representative of PricewaterhouseCoopers, is here today to respond to any questions. The board recommends a vote for the ratification of the appointment of PricewaterhouseCoopers as the company's independent registered public accountants for fiscal 2022. The next item is the advisory vote on executive compensation. We are seeking advisory shareholder approval of the compensation of our named executive officers, and the board recommends a vote for this proposal. The next item is a shareholder proposal by Mercy Investment Services, Inc. and co-filers. I understand that Lydia Kuykendall, a representative of the shareholder, is here to present this proposal, and I would like to invite her to do so.
I hereby move Proposal 4, asking our company to report on its state and federal lobbying expenditures, including indirect funding of lobbying through trade associations and social welfare groups. The concern for investors is that although Disney has a large lobbying footprint, a complete picture of its spending to influence public policy, including payments to third-party groups and unreported grassroots lobbying, is unavailable to shareholders. As a result, investors are asking for a commitment to corporate political responsibility by disclosing all dark money payments to third-party groups that use that money to influence policy. In fact, Disney does not even issue a comprehensive report of its own direct lobbying. That data is scattered among federal and state regulators and is difficult to obtain. What we do know is that Disney spent almost $8 million in 2020 and 2021 on federal lobbying activities, and from 2010 to 2021, Disney reported spending over $46 million on federal lobbying. Additionally, there is incomplete disclosure about spending at the state level, where an expert has called finding this information nearly impossible given the Byzantine manner in which the data is captured and made available. Yet our company has this information on hand and could easily provide it. Also, Disney has a huge blind spot when it comes to trade associations and social welfare groups. Corporations regularly make payments to trade associations that are used to lobby indirectly on their behalf without specific disclosure or accountability. These associations spend hundreds of millions to lobby. For example, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has spent more than $1.6 billion since 1998. Disney fails to disclose a top limit for these trade association payments. All they have is a category for over $500,000. We don't know if that's $501,000 or $10 million. In fact, recent disclosures by Exxon and Comcast, who have top payments to trade associations at over $10 million and $6 million respectively, illustrate that this spending can be very significant. This lack of disclosure can also lead to lobbying misalignment, as in the case of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Disney signed an agreement to work with the United Nations Environment to combat and raise awareness around climate change. Yet the Chamber continues to aggressively lobby against science-based targets to combat climate change. How much of Disney's lobbying dollars are being used to defeat measures that would fight climate change? We have no way of knowing. Disney also fails to disclose payments to 501c4 social welfare organizations, which also lobby. For example, the Rule of Law Defense Fund is a social welfare group that helped organize a protest before the riots at the Capitol on January 6th. It is an arm of the Republican Attorneys General Association. Does our company make contributions to groups like the Rule of Law Defense Fund? We have no way to know, because Disney fails to disclose its contributions to these organizations. Disclosure transparency is a safety mechanism for our company, its reputation, and therefore its shareholders, as what gets disclosed gets managed. Full disclosure of Disney's lobbying, including all third-party payments, will ensure proper oversight for our company's lobbying, and I urge stockholders to vote for this proposal. Thank you.
The Board of Directors has recommended a vote against this proposal for the reasons set out in the proxy statement. The next item is a shareholder proposal by Kenneth Steiner. I understand that John Chevedden is here to present this proposal, and I would like to invite him to do so.
Proposal 5, a special shareholder meeting improvement. Shareholders ask our board to take the steps necessary to amend the company governing documents to give the owners of 10% of our outstanding common stock the power to call a special shareholder meeting. It is important to vote for this proposal because it can now take more than half of Disney's shares to call a special shareholder meeting to vote on a matter of urgency to Disney. Disney currently has one of the highest face value stock ownership thresholds to call a special shareholder meeting, 25% of shares, and it goes downhill from here. This 25% of shares translates into 38% of the Disney shares that normally vote at an annual meeting. It would be hopeless to expect that Disney shareholders who do not have the time to vote would go out of their way to take the special procedural steps to ask for a special shareholder meeting. On top of the high 25% stock ownership requirement that translates into 38% of shares that vote at our annual meeting is the fact that all shares not held for one continuous year are totally disqualified from formally participating in the call for a special shareholder meeting. Thus, the shareholders who own 38% of shares held for one continuous year could determine that they hold 51% of shares that typically vote at the annual meeting when their shares held for less than one continuous year are included. In contrast to this current potential 51% stock ownership threshold to call for a special shareholder meeting, we need the more reasonable stock ownership threshold called for in this proposal. Special meetings allow shareholders to vote on important matters such as electing new directors with special expertise or independence that may be lacking in our current directors, as was the case with the 3 new Exxon directors supported by the Engine No. 1 hedge fund in 2021. Our management is best served by providing the means for 10% of shareholders who may have special expertise to bring emerging opportunities or solutions to problems to the attention of Disney management and to all Disney shareholders. Shareholder engagement can be a toothless way to introduce new ideas to management. Disney management can abruptly discontinue or drastically restructure any shareholder engagement if it fails to give mostly cheerleading support to management. It is important to improve the current highly restrictive rules for shareholders to call a special shareholder meeting to give Disney shareholders a viable option if Disney management simply goes through the motions of shareholder engagement. There are no bylaw provisions that guarantee that Disney management will give shareholder engagement a certain minimum level of respect. Thus, management has great latitude in ignoring shareholder engagement. This proposal will strengthen management's professed commitment to shareholder engagement for the benefit of Disney shareholders. Please vote yes. Special Shareholder Meeting Improvement Proposal 5.
The Board of Directors has recommended a vote against this proposal for the reasons set out in the proxy statement. The next item is a shareholder proposal by National Legal and Policy Center. I understand that Paul Chesser is here to present this proposal, and I would like to invite him to do so.
National Legal and Policy Center promotes ethics in public life through research, investigation, education, and legal action, and is the sponsor of the Corporate Integrity Project. An annual report on due diligence on human rights is all we're asking for from the Walt Disney Company, and we ask our fellow shareholders to support our resolution. But Disney's board of directors says that's a waste of the company's time and money. This multi-billion-dollar corporation fritters away millions of dollars of the company's resources on social justice initiatives for things like erasing symbols of our nation's history, forcing abusive racial training programs on employees, and adding content warnings to classic films like Dumbo and Fantasia. Disney's board thinks the company has plenty of time and money for things like that. But do you know what else Disney has the time and money for? They had the time and money to film Mulan in the part of communist China with among the most disgusting and egregious human rights violations in the world, in Xinjiang. Forced abortion, slavery, torture, and genocide are among the reported atrocities conducted under the authoritarian government against the Muslim minority Uyghurs in northwest China. The degree of evil in this region is so bad that it means you cannot trust anything that is produced there because of the forced labor practices that are going on. You can't trust the cotton, the sugar, assembled products, anything that comes out of that region. And it's not just me saying that, it's the human rights groups that are saying that. And it's also top members of Congress from both political parties who say that. The Democratic chairman of the Special Joint Committee on China in Congress confirmed to Disney's ESPN recently that, yes, quote, it is a genocide. But rather than avoid Xinjiang and the abusive government that manages the region, Disney instead filmed Mulan there and then thanked the local authorities for their help in the film's credits. So when the rest of the responsible corporate world is running away from the stigma of slavery, Disney is praising the local communists. Meanwhile, Disney executives say they will not release any new films in Russia due to Vladimir Putin's aggression against the Ukraine. Since when do ESG principles mean you get to support genocidal regimes in Asia, but you must oppose colonial warmongering in Europe? It seems like cognitive dissonance to me. But again, as the board says in this year's proxy, they just don't have the time and money to be accountable for this stuff. What other priorities besides Mulan has the company made time and money for? They so badly wanted a Disney resort in Shanghai that the company gave majority ownership of the theme park to the Chinese government-controlled company. And Disney's leadership also thinks it's important for ESPN to be in business partnership with NBA China and Chinese broadcaster Tencent, despite those entities' well-known censorship practices. And Disney executives make sure that their Chinese government partners stay happy by self-censoring episodes of The Simpsons and movies like Doctor Strange. No need to upset dictator Xi Jinping. Still, Disney's board of directors says our shareholder resolution asking for a human rights report is a, quote, misplaced premise. Disney's lawyers use lots of meaningless words like policies, practices, principles, and standards to make it appear like they are vigilant in doing something about human rights. They even say they are, quote, deeply committed to human rights. Deeply committed is a favorite phrase of corporate lawyers. Disney even says it supports documents like the United Nations Universal Declaration on Human Rights. But is this statement doing anything to China for its genocidal actions? Just because you say you're for something doesn't mean you're doing anything about it. Rather than all these empty statements and policies, National Legal Policy Center wants to know what Disney's actually doing in conducting its business with China and other countries with poor human rights protections. But all the Disney board has to say for itself is that our proposal is a waste of their time, that they don't have enough resources to carry it out, and that they are already disclosing their human rights activities. Well, the Security and Exchange Commission disagreed with Disney's lawyers, which is why this resolution is in this year's proxy statement. We have asked our fellow shareholders at BlackRock and Vanguard to support our proposal, but they have given no indication whether they will do so. I guess their so-called ESG principles also have an exception clause for communist China. Nonetheless, all we ask is that Disney's leadership simply explain the human rights impacts of their interactions with foreign governments and entities. If they can't bring themselves to do that, then the question we have for Disney executives is, what are you hiding? Thank you.
The Board of Directors has recommended a vote against this proposal for the reasons set out in the proxy statement. The next item is a shareholder proposal by Ann Butterfield. I understand that Julia Cederholm is here to present this proposal, and I would like to invite her to do so.
Good morning. My name is Julia Cederholm from investment management firm Arjuna Capital, and I move the pay equity proposal asking for a report on median and adjusted racial and gender pay gaps as a means to address pay inequity. Disney does not disclose adjusted or unadjusted median racial and gender pay gaps.
Soon, we'll be sharing our updated corporate values with our employees and cast members around the world. One of those important values is inclusivity, which has been a key area of focus for us in recent years, and it will remain a priority. We championed underrepresented voices through our iconic content. We further diversified our workforce behind the scenes, including in our senior ranks.
Disclosure of these pay gaps is critical for Disney, as it has faced multiple allegations of pay discrimination in recent years. To adequately address employees' and investors' concerns, Disney is in need of the pay equity transparency called on by this proposal. Pay inequity persists across race and gender and needs to be addressed by companies like Disney. Last year, Black workers' median earnings represented 64% of white wages, and women's median earnings represented 83% of men's wages. Actively managing pay equity is a business imperative, as it's associated with improved representation, superior stock performance, and higher return on equity. Best practice pay equity reporting consists of two elements: statistically adjusted numbers and unadjusted median numbers. This proposal asks Disney to report on both. Adjusted numbers, which assess pay between minorities and non-minorities and men and women performing similar roles, are increasingly becoming a standard disclosure for large U.S. companies. Yet full transparency also includes publishing median pay gaps, which address the structural racism and sexism that relegate people of color and women into low-paying job categories. Narrowing median pay gaps requires a comprehensive evaluation of hiring, development, and promotion practices. These gaps provide distinct value from representation data alone, as they show, quite literally, how the company assigns value to its employees through the roles they inhabit and the pay they receive. They also provide a digestible data point for investors to assess how the company stacks up to peers and makes progress over time. Shrinking these gaps is in service to greater diversity, talent retention, and performance. Disney already reports the median gender pay gap for its UK operations, reflecting a 12% base gender pay gap and a 25% bonus gender pay gap, but it has declined to publish data beyond the UK. Companies that are comfortable publishing both adjusted and median pay data, including Starbucks, Citigroup, Adobe, Pfizer, MasterCard, and recently Microsoft, are showing leadership. By disclosing these statistics, they're providing a new standard for accountability, transparency, and performance. I am disappointed to say that Disney is not one of those companies, and I am surprised that given where we are as a country, the pay divides that have been exacerbated by the pandemic and the protests to uphold Black lives, that the company is fighting this simple and reasonable request. Thank you for your support of transparent, fulsome, and honest pay equity accounting.
The Board of Directors has recommended a vote against this proposal for the reasons set out in the proxy statement. The next item is a shareholder proposal by National Center for Public Policy Research. The full text of the proposal is set forth in the proxy statement. I understand that Justin Danhoff is here to present this proposal, and I would like to invite him to do so.
I'm Justin Danhoff of the National Center for Public Policy Research, and I move proposal number 8, which seeks to protect Disney from a myriad of legal and reputational risks stemming from its race-based employee training programs. But first, I have a question. Was Whoopi Goldberg required to attend Disney's so-called anti-racism trainings? If so, that may explain a lot about her completely warped views on race, the culture at Disney, and the damaging effects of critical race theory on our culture generally. Critical race theory, or CRT, debases human existence by reducing it to a singular element that no one can control: their skin tone. This absolutely racist teaching focuses on so-called white privilege being at the root of everything in society, and insists that white people are always the oppressor and everyone else in society is oppressed to one degree or another. Brainwashing like this leads to the illogical conclusion of folks such as Goldberg that Jews are white and therefore incapable of being victims of racism. CRT has so distorted beliefs that supposedly educated people are given nationwide platforms to declare that the Holocaust was not about race. That's of course insane. Hitler would be shocked to know that his entire Nazi effort was about something other than race. But CRT doesn't teach history. It teaches racial histrionics rooted in Marxist philosophies. Given all this, why would Disney subject its employees to CRT trainings? Last May, it was reported that Disney subjected its staff to something called Reimagine Tomorrow, where we all belong.
Last year, we launched a company-wide initiative, Reimagine Tomorrow, with the goal to advance opportunities for diverse communities, amplify underrepresented voices, and champion the importance of representation in media and entertainment. And I'm pleased to say that Reimagine Tomorrow and a host of other initiatives company-wide are having a positive impact, increasing awareness and facilitating constructive dialogue.
In this exercise, among other degrading tasks, participants had to fill out a white privilege checklist and were asked how they could pivot away from white dominant culture. The program culminated with a 21-day challenge for employees to reflect on being, quote, raised in a society that elevates white culture over others, end quote. Surely us shareholders have a right to see Mr. Chapek's white privilege checklist, don't we? His skin tone must be the only reason he's at the top of the company, right? And we should also have a look at Ms. Arnold's 21-day reflection on American society's elevation of white culture over others. When you say these things out loud, Can you all understand how absurd this sounds? And when Disney and other companies team up with the far left to promote CRT and pretend that America is irreparably and systematically racist, it is doing the bidding of the Chinese Communist Party. The CCP commits actual human rights abuses by running slave labor camps where it harvests organs and rapes and sterilizes women of the minority Muslim Uyghurs. Yet when our State Department and others report on this, the CCP simply responds that the United States is no better since it oppresses its Black and brown populations. Disney is giving air cover to slave labor, full stop. The company's hypocrisy on these issues is so profound. In fact, it would be impressive if it weren't also so tragic. Shareholders and the public can also be forgiven for seeing the hypocrisy in the company's recent decision to pull its films from Russia. Yes, Russia's actions and Vladimir Putin's actions in the Ukraine are evil, but so is the CCP. And Disney is mum on human rights issues in China, where it has more business at stake. In fact, you know what? If America is such an awful and systematically racist country, perhaps you should pull your films from the United States as well. Or at a minimum, stop subjecting your employees to racist and Marxist trainings. That would be a good start. Please join me in voting yes on proposal number 8.
The Board of Directors has recommended a vote against this proposal for the reasons set out in the proxy statement.
Item 1, the election of directors.
I declare that all of the nominees for election for the board have been duly elected.
Item 2, ratification of the appointment of PricewaterhouseCoopers.
The appointment of PricewaterhouseCoopers has been duly ratified.
Item 3, relating to executive compensation.
The advisory resolution of executive compensation is approved.
Item 4, relating to lobbying disclosure.
The first shareholder proposal is not approved.
Item 5, relating to a special meeting threshold.
The second shareholder proposal is not approved.
Item 6, relating to a diligence report evaluating human rights impacts.
The third shareholder proposal is not approved.
Item 7, relating to a report on median and adjusted pay gaps.
The fourth shareholder proposal is approved.
Item 8, relating to a workplace non-discrimination audit and report.
And the fifth shareholder proposal is not approved.
James Moorhead, a shareholder from California. Please go ahead.
Hello, I'm a Disney longtime shareholder, CDC and D23 member and customer of your products. I'm reading a statement written by my younger daughter. She says it better than I ever could. I hope you will listen. She wrote, "It was always my dream to be a cast member with Disney. I finally realized that dream in 2019 when I joined the Disney College program in Florida. When that came to an end due to the pandemic, I was waiting for an opportunity to come back to the company. I was especially excited when inclusion was added as the fifth key and the Disney look was updated to be more inclusive and gender non-conforming cast members. I applied to the Disney store and have been making magic there for almost a year. Disappointment does not begin to describe my feelings toward Bob Chapek's message to the team concerning Florida's anti-gay legislation. I feel heartbroken. To go from adding inclusion as a priority to the company to not taking a stand against hatred is beyond disappointing. You can't stand on the sidelines when it comes to human rights. Either the Walt Disney Company stands with the LGBTQ+ community or they betray them. Donating to politicians supporting this bill and choosing to not make a statement is a political statement. Making inclusive content is great, but it will not shut down this bill. I have yet to see any real LGBTQ+ representation in a mainstream Disney show or movie. I was excited by Owl House and the gay films in the works at Blue Sky Studios, but those were shut down by Disney. If LGBTQ+ content is said to be the focus of the company, where is it? A blink and you miss it, lesbian kiss in Star Wars is not representation. The Walt Disney Company has great influence in Florida. I'm imploring you, as you have just stated you are now committed to doing, to denouncing bills across the country. Please stop financing politicians. Choose human rights. Do better. Thank you for taking my question.
Hi, my name is Laura Nixon, and I'm with the Educational Foundation of America. We are long-term shareholders of Disney. We screen our holdings based on environmental, social, and governance criteria, and we admire Disney's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and many laudable environmental goals. Like many shareholders, we're interested in the role that our investee companies play in the political process. We're discouraged by the fact that Disney and its employee PAC does not always seem to take the company's values into consideration when making political contributions. You mentioned the LGBT legislation in Florida. In addition, Disney has supported candidates in Florida and Georgia who championed bills to restrict voting rights. And in the 2020 election cycle, Disney contributed $125,000 to members of the Florida House who voted last week to ban abortion at 15 weeks of pregnancy. Half of that went to sponsors of that bill. Since 1 in 4 women have an abortion in her lifetime, we know this bill will badly impact Disney's workforce in Florida. My question is, what steps is the company taking to reduce the dissonance between its values and its political giving? Thank you.
Randy Schultz, an investor from Missouri. Please go ahead.
Yes, I know I've been a stockholder of Disney for a long time, and I was just wondering, when will Disney reinstate their dividend on their shares of Disney stock? It's been over a year since you paid a dividend.
My name is Ignacio Patricio, and I am here representing Citizen Go. Disney, from its very inception, has always represented a safe haven for children, a place where they can be free from the distractions and conflicts of the real world. You say it yourselves in your beautiful slogan, a magical place where dreams come true. Part of this magic was thanks to the fact that both at the parks and in the movies, Disney was apolitical and remained free from politics and ideology and the division that comes with it. Your recent Magical Pride Days and your upcoming LGBTQ Pride March this year is a blatant attempt at indoctrinating children and attendees towards a certain political ideology. Additionally, in a move that will horrify many parents, Pixar is searching for its first transgender character and is looking to cast a child in this role. Transgender ideology seeks to confuse as many children as possible in the name of an anti-biological program in service to a political agenda. My question to you today is, would it not be beneficial both to you and the millions of Disney lovers around the world to ditch the politicization and gender ideology from your content aimed at children and instead try to win back the trust of families by sliding away from politics altogether and reverting back to the magic and innocence that has been the founding motive for its success? Thank you.
Please like, subscribe, and comment on the video. May the Force be with you.
Impressive. Most impressive.